Welcome to the Don't Mess with Our Kids podcast. My name is Jenny Donnelly, and this is my great friend, Shauna Damberg. And we're here today to share about a movement that came out of Peru called Don't Mess with Our Kids. Because I think that you and I could agree the attack on the kids has gone way too far, the attack on the family. And so Shauna and I are looking for all of you out there who want to come and support the family, protect the family. We know that you love your children, you love your grandkids. So we're in this together, but we are in a crisis in America. The family is under attack. But what happened in Peru, they were able to turn things around. And so we saw what they did and we said, you know what? It's time for America. This is going to work. Yep. And so thank you so much for being here. We have guests on this podcast that have been in the fight of faith in one way or another, and they inspire us. And that's why we want to introduce them to you through these conversations. But first, let's do this. Would you like and subscribe to this podcast, because somebody out there in your life, as you also share this, needs to hear this conversation today because they need courage, they need boldness, and their family needs them to be bold and courageous too. So join us in liking, subscribing, and sharing, and we're going to get started. So today, our guest name is April Moss. I actually met her, Shauna, at the Freedom Tour in Florida.
Okay.
And actually was there at the end of the event, and she started telling me her story. And I said, okay, you are going to have to come on the podcast.
I was reading her bio and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to talk to this person. She's so incredible.
Amazing. And I'm going to skip some of the bio because I don't want to give it away, because I want her to
we
share
want her
that
to tell
piece.
it.
Absolutely. But her husband, Nathan, and her have been married for 19 years. She's a mom of 4 incredible sons. I love that.
Amazing.
And Shauna is a mother of 2 boys, lots of grandkids. So this is going to be cool. But they're 18 to 6 years old, which I love that too. My kids are spread across the age range like that as well.
they play airsoft and they play sports, and they're that too. But it has been really interesting to be a boy mom. I never thought I would be a boy mom. So that's, God gives you what you need, not necessarily what you want, right?
I love that so much. And MANCADEMY, I can't wait to dive into this more, because obviously raising four sons positioned you to have a very strong desire to see boys become men of God. So I can't wait to see what that's all about. Let's do this first. Would you share the story that you shared with me when I first met you about how you courageously used your voice in a very risky way as a newscaster, a weather, is it called a weathercaster? Tell me what
Well,
we're calling you.
it's
What's the name?
meteorologist is
There
that.
you go. The
Yeah.
girl who did the weather. Okay. And so you would come on, tell us about that job. So was that daily? Was it just you were only certain days of the week, or how did that work?
Yeah. So this is how great God is. I always knew that I wanted to stay at home with my children when we had them, but I, had a degree in broadcast journalism and political science, and we had our children right away after we got married. So there was a period of time where I certainly was struggling with well, Lord, I want to be home with my kids, but I really haven't done anything with this degree. And I was feeling just pressure. And I'm sure many women can relate to this. We feel this pressure to be everything, right? Be someone who's going to come alongside our husbands and provide substantial income. But we also want to be the PTA mom and the mom who's at every single event and on every field trip and all of these things. But the Lord knew what he was doing. And so I stayed home with my sons until they were about grade school. And we had decided that we were going to homeschool them. So trying to homeschool twin boys from preschool into kindergarten, when all of the community around me that were homeschool moms, they all had daughters. And so I want to just say to any mom that's listening to this, who is raising boys, and you might be around other ladies who have girls,
Very different.
do not feel like you are a bad mom or somehow you've missed it in life because your son doesn't want to sit still and read chapter after chapter of a book at 6 years old. And so I wish I would have, if I could talk to my 25-year-old self and say, listen, your boys are going to be great. You're the perfect mom for them. And God doesn't make mistakes. He gives us exactly what we need and what our children need. And so
because that comparison thing sneaks up big time, especially when they're little and they're your first.
Yeah.
Now I have little kids, and my oldest are young adults, and I look at my little kids now and just go, oh, it is what it is. But when you're first, you're looking at these other kids, like I'm looking at other kids going, they read and they're 5. My kids are like, they're not interested in the alphabet, let alone picking up a book and reading. And so you can just feel like, yeah, I'm missing it here. So I think that's a really, really good point. And then homeschool becomes extremely intimidating because you're thinking, well, I don't even know if I can help them advance and that kind of thing. But you do coaching. You do coaching with that, which I'm kind of jumping around here because I want you to go back to your story.
Yeah. So my husband and I, now that our oldest are 18, we graduated them a year early, and we still have, our youngest is 7. So we're very much actively parenting. And I would say that as much as, parenting toddlers is extremely demanding and it's very hands-on, so much. Even when your children are teenagers, I would say you're still full on, and you should be still full on. Although I think that that's where we're tempted to kind of back off a little bit, because it's like, okay, our child is 12 or 13, and like, wow, we've poured into them so much, and so we're kind of exhausted. We're going to kind of lean, just kind of take things, take a step back a little bit, maybe not be so on top of the parenting with them. And I've just noticed over the years, that's the last thing that you should do. In fact, I think it needs to be a little bit more full on.
Agree.
And we've had so many great nights where, and I believe it's because our main goal was never, of course, we want our kids to be successful in life. Of course, we want them to be smart. But the goal was never academics. The goal was discipleship.
Come on.
And so
Say
We
that again.
right? I mean, and I could like tear up right now just thinking of it, because when you're in what I call the trenches of motherhood, where you've got littles running all around, and it's an exhausting phase of motherhood.
Yeah.
Sometimes we feel like we're failing. We're failing at motherhood. We're failing at being a good wife, or whatever the societal pressures are. And if I could just speak to those moms right now and say, you are doing fantastic. Just showing up and being there and being intentional with your parenting and being engaged with your kids. Putting the phone down, and even good activities. Like, I was part of a homeschool group of women, and man, almost every day of the week they were like, can you meet us at the park here? Can you do this? Can you do that? And those things are good, but sometimes you kind of just need to say, wait a second, we're going to stay home today. We got to deal with this behavioral issue that's risen up in one of our children. And I'll tell you, like, and my son has given me permission to share this, that through the years, as our kids, struggle with different things, it takes so much time to get to the root issue of
Absolutely.
what you're seeing manifest out. And so had we not taken the time to homeschool and have that one-on-one with them, and listen, I'm not saying homeschool is for everybody. I just want to make that clear. But we've just seen in our lives, now I can fully say, I have 18-year-olds. We homeschool them all throughout, with the exception of 1 or 2 years where we had to put them into school for my health reasons. I'm seeing the fruit of all of the time that we've invested, and my sons, everywhere we go, and this is not to pat me on the back, this is to thank God for his faithfulness, that everywhere we go, our children stand out in a positive way. And we have people flocking to us to say, we just had to meet you because we've met your kids and they're amazing, and we just needed to meet their parents. And that blows me away, because I know how I am. I'm not perfect. And I know that I need Jesus for every single moment of my parenting. And so the point is, if the Lord's calling you to something, you just need to be obedient. And that brings me back to originally why you brought me on the show, was to talk about, why did I make the choice I did to take a stand and use my voice? And it's because I made hard decisions. When I say hard decisions, I mean I was obedient to God. And a lot of times the things that God calls us to are hard. It's not the way that culture is going. It's not the way that even some of your members at church, your friends at church, are going. It's the road God calls your family to individually. And to say yes to that is courageous, because it's usually against the grain, at least in our lives. Every step of the way, when God has told us to do something, it was against what everyone else around us was advising at the time. But we trusted only in him without having any, it's not like God tells you, don't worry, if you just obey me right now, everything's going to be great. You're not going to have any worries, right? He doesn't tell you that. He just says, trust me. And when you do that, you don't know the outcome, but we can trust God. He's trustworthy. And so what happened was, I was when my sons, we homeschooled them for a little bit, and then I started to actually lose my hair. I'm not kidding you. I was 28, and I remember going to the doctor and saying, I'm going bald in the front. Is this just what happens when you get close to 30? And he looked at me and he's like, no. He's like, you are really, really stressed, and you need to try to eliminate some stress from your life. And at the time, my twin boys, they were wonderful and fantastic, but I was stressed with homeschooling them, and I didn't have really any support, because people in my life at the time were actually against us homeschooling. So
yeah, that was, I was going to say, timing wise, with how old your boys are now, if I do a little bit of math, that was the same too with our kids that are similar ages. I remember it was very much like, what are you doing? You're going to
ruin them.
Qualified to do that. And you're like, yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah. Like, they're not going to get any social interaction.
Yeah.
Like all of those kinds of things.
Oh yeah. And so you were just going for it anyway, because God told you to, but you're under this amount of pressure and stress. Okay.
Yeah. So
and you're also a meteorologist at this time.
Well, so I wasn't a
Was that later?
meteorologist. Yes, later I went
Okay.
back to school and got my atmospheric sciences degree. But at that time, we decided, okay, we'll put our kids in this little charter school by our house. It's close to home. I'm gonna take care of my body and figure out what I need to do to get healthy again. And throughout that, they were only in school for a year and a half, and then God allowed us to be able to bring them back home, and they were home after that. But there were moments where throughout those years, I was just working on the weekends. So I would homeschool them Monday through Friday, and then I'd go into work on the weekends, and I was the weekend meteorologist. So just to put it in perspective, yes, I had a great job. I had what many people would deem a glamorous job, but that's not where my heart was. For me, if I have an amazing job, but my kids don't turn out to be good people and they don't love the
Right.
Lord,
Like,
and they,
who cares?
right?
Exactly.
It's like, doesn't matter. So our focus was always, I need to be home as much as possible. So the Lord allowed that to happen for 10 years. I was the weekend meteorologist. And then 2020 hit. And of course, in Michigan, as I know that you can relate, in Washington and Oregon and
Mhm.
all of those more liberal states, they were locking everybody down. Now, during that time, I would say the first 2 weeks that the lockdowns began, which was mid-March, I began to receive documentation from my employer, from CBS Television in New York, but also from the Department of Homeland Security. And it said, you need to print these papers out and keep them with you at all times. And if you're stopped by law enforcement, show them these papers. And I looked at the papers, and one of them said, the bearer of this letter must be able to restore downed communications. And then the other letter said, the bearer of this letter must be able to obtain gasoline. So any person with a brain reads those
Wow.
letters and thinks, wait a second. This is implying that the general public isn't going to have access to gasoline, or the communications are going to be down. So I call my boss and say, can you explain these letters, please? He couldn't give me any explanation. He just said, just keep them with you. So the fear factor was so high at that time, but that was the catalyst moment for me to begin researching. And so it took me about 2 weeks, and I researched, and I know now that the Lord was the one driving that. He wanted me to know the truth, and he wanted me to get to the bottom of it. Well, once you find out what really was going on, which was a globalized plan to depopulate and destroy the middle class, it's so nefarious, right?
Exactly.
It's so nefarious that I kept thinking, okay, I can't be the only one finding this out. Surely somebody at CBS New York, this is how naive I was about the media. And I was praying, like, Lord, why did you have me discover this? But yet, what do I do with this information? I'm just a meteorologist on the weekends. I mean, who am I, right? And so for a year, I prayed and asked the Lord. And so eventually I contacted Project Veritas, which was at the time a great nonprofit organization that was designed for whistleblowers, people to come forward with important information. And the founder of that, James O'Keefe, ended up calling me one day and saying, April, we want to go public with your story. Now, leading up to that, I told you I had been in prayer for a long time about this. Project Veritas said, thank you so much for giving us all this information. And this was back when the Summer of Love, I know so many great things happened right in your city while you're watching Chaz and Chop and all of that. Well, CBS was now sending communications out to all of its affiliate TV stations, think about it, worldwide, and telling them that we must get involved, employees must get involved with supporting this social justice with BLM.
Wow.
And that they were actually going to partner with organizations to promote this agenda. And I, had multiple conversations with people that I work with and said, wait a second, this is not what media is supposed to do. We're supposed to give both sides of the information and allow people to make an educated decision for themselves. We don't tell them what to think and all of that. So I realized that that the media was going off the rails with this. So I had sent this information to Project Veritas, and they were like, hey, thanks so much for giving us this info, but we're not going to go public with your story. And so this was around May of 2021. And I thought, okay, well, I at least feel like my conscience is clear. I've done everything I possibly could do to help people realize, kind of like snap them out to realize you can't trust the media. And so then I was listening to Dutch Sheets, and I'm not sure how familiar you are with him, but his prophetic words.
Yes.
And at the time he had a dream. This was like the same week this was happening. And he said, in my dream, I saw a pen of sheep, and I heard the Lord's audible voice speak to the sheep, call them that which they were not. And he said, lions, stand up. And the moment that the Lord's voice said, lions, stand up, those sheep turned into roaring lions.
Wow.
And when I heard that, I just was sobbing. I knew that the Lord was speaking to me to not be afraid. And so I said, okay, God, whatever it is, like, you just have to show me what to do. And within a matter of hours, I had another confirmation that I saw somebody who had a shirt that said lions, not sheep. And it was a very, like, I knew it was the Lord talking to me. And then within a few hours after that, James O'Keefe calls me on the phone and says, we've changed our minds. We're going to go public with your story. So It was 3 confirmations. I knew I was supposed to use my voice. And
meanwhile, you're still an employee. You're still working for them.
yes,
And they're going to go public with this. So now what? This is
so disclose discrimination that CBS is enforcing upon its employees. And then I went right
You're
back
doing
into-
this live on television
during
Yes.
her weather report.
during your weather report. Oh my God.
Yes.
This is so rad. Okay, go ahead. I just need to
And-
clarify. That's what was happening.
Yeah, and it's on YouTube. If you guys want to Google it, you can watch it. It's on.
We'll put it in the show
Will
notes.
do.
100%.
And
Yeah,
so,
keep going. Tell
Keep
us.
going. You're in the middle
Yeah.
of your weather report. Here you
yeah. And
So
the
you're like,
prayer,
and it's going to be stormy clouds this afternoon. And meanwhile, and so you're keeping with the weather voice,
so I'll
there's the weather
just,
voice, whatever, right?
yeah,
And you're just da 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 da. What did you say? What did
yeah.
you say?
I just
I'm
said,
so curious.
I was talking about the weather that was going to happen in the upcoming week because it was a Sunday. And I said, well, speaking of a brand new week, I will be sitting down this week with Project Veritas to discuss the discrimination that CBS is enforcing upon its employees. Tune in this week to Project Veritas for more details. And then I said, and then the rain moves in later this afternoon, blah, blah, blah. I went straight it back in. And the prayer was, Lord, let this go out on the airwaves. Let nobody stop it from airing.
This is live.
I was praying that people in master control weren't really listening to what I was saying, which thankfully was the case. And it wasn't until the next day at like 10 a.m. that I heard from my boss. And that's also on tape I recorded him firing me. He said it was the most selfish thing he's ever seen in 35 years of broadcasting. And I wish I would have had a better mental clarity at that moment to say something snappy back. But what I will say now is no, what's selfish is a company enforcing policies onto people that are unconstitutional. That's what's
Exactly.
And of course, in the moment, my emotions were just roller coaster, and so I didn't have anything snappy to come back with, except to say that it was a violation of federal law under the Experimental Use Authorization Act. So they were violating law. But as we've seen in the last 4 years, lawlessness is abounding. And so they don't care if they're breaking laws. And so I knew I was going to get fired. I was promptly fired within 24 hours. But that act of doing that, which by the way came with lots of prayer, it wasn't something on a whim that I did. And I had the full support of my husband and my sons behind me. But the real reason I felt so compelled to speak up is one, I was watching everyone around me be hurt by what the media continued to do. Remember when grandparents were afraid to hug their grandchildren and you saw people put shower curtains up and hug around a shower curtain. I mean, it's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. And it's like, we have to talk about it because thank God it's over. But can you believe what they've done to people, what they did to our children and the masking and what that does? But I don't know if you've had a chance to really think about this. I've spent so much time thinking about the agenda behind it's very demonic. When they wanted everybody to wear a mask and stand 6 feet apart, if you really understand satanic rituals, everyone in a satanic ritual is standing 6 feet apart.
Oh boy.
And they all are masked. So wow. When I came to that realization, which was probably like April, May-ish of 2020, it was a light bulb moment for me. I was like, we cannot comply with this because they are literally wanting us to participate in a satanic ritual. They want to get people groomed for this. That's right. And we have to be aware as Christians of the devil's schemes. We have to be. You can't have
put people next to each other worshiping the devil because you know what? Somebody might lean over and go, do you think this is a little weird? They don't want any suggested yeah, I do think it's weird. Now that you're saying that, it probably is weird. We need to get out of here somehow. Because when you put people together in proximity closer than 6 feet apart, they talk to each other. They come they come to their senses, Yeah. So of course, 6 feet apart is so nobody can get any ideas that you're under massive deception. Totally. I mean, let alone the spiritual implications of what we're talking about, but just practically when people use their voice together, where 2 or more come together and agree on anything, God says, I will do it. So you were seeing this way back then. Thank God. Now, what are you thinking? Here's a dangerous question. What do you think about the fact that we're in election year? Do you think, there's no way we're just going to walk into the elections with no issues and no surprise, here's a pretend problem that we can solve because we're narcissistic and we want to create a problem that we solve. And now the villain becomes the hero. Do you think that we're right here again with something like that?
Yeah, and I think it's going to be a climate issue. I think they're going
Well,
to
there you go.
use a climate emergency. And Biden, this is a very serious, scary issue in the fact that Biden actually has COVID-like authority and powers. If he were to implement an emergency act due to the climate, it would give him this insane amount of power. It would actually remove and strip people of their constitutional rights. This is all what people need to understand. If this is all new to them, is that this is nothing that just came out of nowhere. This was a very laid out strategic plan and plot to destroy America that has been in the works for decades. And through my whistleblow about mainstream media, it has propelled me into some of the most incredible areas where I'm having meetings with generals and military people. And sometimes I'm just like, Lord, I can't believe this is what you've propelled me into.
And you have your degree in what? Atmospheric
Sciences. Yeah.
That's crazy. Look what God is going to do through you with that. Okay, so
And I
I'm
want to be
so-
clear too,
yeah.
because the next question that so many people ask is, oh, well, if you're a meteorologist, then you know all about the government cloud seeding programs and the weather manipulation, all of that. And I just want everyone to understand those are government programs that do that. The average television meteorologist does not know anything about that. And then even all of the schools for meteorology that you go to, when you're learning how to put together a forecast and you're drawing from the different instruments that you have to get readings from in order to put a forecast together, which by the way that computers nowadays make everything so quick and easy to do, but you're getting all of your data, just so everyone's clear, from government. Okay, so think about that. It's what the government is telling you, right?
Yeah.
And then that's how we base our forecast. So I just want everyone to understand that a typical meteorologist on TV that delivers you your 7 or 10 day forecast, they're getting those readings and that stuff from government locations where there are thermometers and other instruments. And so we're working with what the government's giving us, and those programs that go into like climate, I won't say climate change, but manipulating the weather, those are all incredibly detailed programs orchestrated by DARPA.
I think people would be listening to this, and people have heard, that the weather can be manipulated and stuff. And I remember when I first heard that, I was like, what? Like a person can manipulate weather. So would this climate like crisis or whatever, do you think it's something like some crazy weather pattern that just justifies everybody has to stay home? Like what does this look like? Because I haven't talked to anybody about this. Just read a little bit.
Well, I don't like to speculate. I like to only talk in facts, but what I would presume could happen is that it would be something along the lines of there's a crisis with oil and we can't get natural gas. People can't fill up gas in their cars. You can't heat your homes. I feel like it's going to be more something like that, where there's like a supply chain issue or there's something like that. And if you paid attention last year to all of the food plants that were caught on fire, all across our country, it's very alarming. There's a map actually that shows all of the fires that broke out in so many, chicken plants and different food plants and things that happened to our cattle and the spills that happened in our water and what happened in East Palestine, Ohio with the way that was handled with the spill. These are all strategic, in my opinion. Okay, I don't have any classified documents showing me, yep, that's what it was. But if you pay attention to what the agenda is to keep everybody so controlled that they can't afford to go drive anywhere anymore because they can't afford the gas in the cars. They can't afford to do things. So they want to create an atmosphere where we are so dependent on the government for help that we're begging the government to save us.
Yep.
Yeah.
They become the hero.
Yeah. And so the only way to combat that is being educated. We have to know that that's their plan. And then secondly, what I tell everyone is, if you can afford to, or maybe even families and churches coming together, purchasing land where you can, start farming, start learning how to have agriculture and getting, a milk cow and chickens and rabbits and things like that. As much as we can be self-sustaining, that is what is going to, I think, make this a little bit easier for people. I'm not a huge advocate of prepping ridiculously, because I just think that too, like, the Lord's going to, I do believe he's going to supernaturally give wisdom and vision and the ability for the church to make it through some of the tough times that are going to be intentionally forced upon us. But, we are in some serious times. And like, you guys talk all the time about the attack on the family. Well, what better way to attack a family than to put them in such financial strains that they feel like, oh, I can't, I can't do anything. Or I can't tell you how many times people have said, well, I don't want to put my kids in public school, but I have to work. And the way that, of course, inflation and everything is, it's so difficult these days to just be able to be a one income household and providing for your families and things like that. So, but our mission now, so I was a broadcaster, I was a meteorologist, and while that served a purpose for the time, now I really feel like the Lord is saying, okay, hearts have to come back home, and we need to really be focusing on how to improve our homes, our family, the hearts within our four walls. Mother Teresa had a wonderful quote, which I've really lived by, and that is, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family. And it's so true. If we just, a lot of times that means time, that means intentionality. And I know for my littlest guy, my 7-year-old, he doesn't have siblings who are his age. And so that's something we're missing, where my older boys all grew up together. They were, my middle son was 2 years younger than the twins. And so the three of them did everything together. And now there's an 8-9 year gap between my youngest. And so it's very tempting for me to get caught up in the busyness of doing things and realize, I didn't do anything fun with, our littlest guy, this week. But like, we would have been more intentional when you had, multiples all around the same age.
Right.
So I always have to remember, okay, he's still little and we need to still do some fun things. And my husband and I decided in February of 2024 that now was the time to launch a vision that God had given my husband back in 2012, and that is to minister to fathers and sons specifically. But we're realizing now that we've launched it, we're really ministering to the moms as well, especially single moms who have sons, and those sons don't have dads who are in their lives. And so we launched MANCADEMY, and it's basically an online membership community where you have like-minded people coming together, and we have a podcast. My husband does dad hack videos and just imparts wisdom to, we provide coaching for parents if they need, one-on-one coaching for a specific issue they're dealing with.
That's so helpful.
Yeah. And then we're really excited because we live in Southwest Florida, and we are launching a father-son experience. So no matter where you live in the country, you can sign your son and your husband up, and you can come, and it'll be a multi-day. I don't like to call it retreat, because I feel like when we hear the word retreat, it's like easy and you're relaxing. This is like all manly. They're doing hard stuff.
All those intensives.
Chopping wood.
And there we go.
And it's all founded on biblical principles, and really comes alongside what you guys are doing, because you understand the attack on identity that the enemy has on our children. And with the boys, from middle school and up, we want them to be so strong in their identity and who they are as a son of God. And so that's what we do. So I feel very called to partner with my husband in that. And so that's what we're working on now.
Well, April, we will put all of that information in our show notes so our listeners can find you guys and take part in your not retreat, your whatever
Advance.
intensive,
I've
whatever
heard
it is.
people call them
Sounds so good.
advances too.
I remember my sons would go to my mom's house who lived on property, and she would have them chop wood. Like that was a big part of what they
I
would do
love
there.
it.
And they loved it. It was hard work, but I love that you mentioned you guys are going to be doing that. But yeah, we're running out of time. So I would love for you just to close us in prayer. But I just want to point out, as I've been listening to sort of the landscape of your whole story, what I've noticed that I want our listeners to catch is that from the beginning, it sounds like, April, you had your priorities in line. And that is why when you were faced with something in the, out working, it didn't intimidate you to stand up for what was right, because you didn't have that as an idol. You didn't have that above your family. You didn't have that above Jesus. You didn't have that above what was true and right. And so because you had your priorities in line, it's like, I know what to do right now. And I feel like we have an opportunity, if that's not you, because I believe there's Christians sometimes that have
Grateful for the lives that you've given us and the ability to be your vessels and speaking your truth into the world that is so lost and a world that you love very much. Father, it's an honor to be able to partner with you to reach those that need to know you, to truly experience your presence. And I pray for every person listening and watching today that they would truly know you, not just know about you, but that they would know how loved they are. And I pray blessings over this movement. I pray blessings over Don't Mess with Our Kids and the impact that this movement is going to have on our country. And Father, even though we hear bad news every day, we fix our eyes on you and your truth, and you are on the throne. Nothing is going to swerve you. You know what's going to happen. And when we put our trust in you, then we don't live by fear and we don't live in uncertainty, but we rest on the solid rock of Jesus Christ in our lives. Thank you so much, Jesus. You're so wonderful. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, April. This has been amazing. We just respect you so much for using your voice in all ways, but really respect you for what you're doing in your personal family. So thank you for inspiring us and giving everybody this compass of what really matters to God, and it is family. That's the best platform, the most important platform we have are these kids and grandkids. So thank you so much. Really appreciate you, and we'll talk to you soon. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. The thing I've been thinking about, Shauna, before we close things up is what an incredible conversation about the air game and the ground game. We've talked about this where the air game is prayer and fasting, where we go and we fight this thing in the spiritual realm. And then the ground game is us going public with the truth, the word of God, in with our highest aim being love. But we have to go public. We have to go outside the walls of our home and the church to put the truth in the public place. And I'm thinking about April going, well, that's what she did. Prayer and fasting. I'm sure she's a fasting girl. If she's hung out with us any point in time, I'm sure that she does that. But prayer, and then, okay, now I'm showing up on my last time.
right.
Doing the weather today, and
So
I am
cool.
going to tell the truth. And I'm losing my job, and she knew she was going to lose it anyway. But it was a couple months later, but still, it's basically saying I'm going to use my voice to make sure that I protect other people and give them an opportunity to know the truth. So this has been awesome today. Listen, the air game is the prayer hub. 2 to 10 people once a month. I'm going to ask you out there, how many of you can you put on your calendar once a month, you and your spouse, you and your kids? I want to make a challenge for you to have your family come together in a prayer hub. And when you go to our app, which is at HVM app, hvmapp.com. When you go to that site, what'll happen is you'll be able to download our new app. It's a brand new app. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. And the best part, it's easy. And so when you go in there, there's resources that are absolutely free. It's our prayer guide that's free. We have our coloring sheets that come every single month for the kids. We have the sing along memory verses for the kids and probably the parents too on the side singing those songs. They'll get in your head. They're pretty fun. But listen, we want you to start a prayer hub. And it's so important that you do this because we can change things with prayer. We heard some things today that were maybe a little bit alarming. We heard some things today that were like, okay, whoa, how do you, when April was talking about preparing, like prepping, like a major prepper, we do that. I make sure my older kids, do you have beans and rice at home? What do you got? What do you got in storage? Or how are you going to eat if, some supply thing goes down for a couple months, whatever. But the biggest thing is we prepare in prayer. We prepare in prayer, and then we prepare in the practical.
Yep.
Say that 10 times fast. My tongue almost didn't make it through that. But anyway, all that to say is we want you to go to hvmapp.com, get the app download, get in there, register your prayer hub, and start clicking away in that app. You'll find resources that are going to be so incredibly helpful to you and your family and protect you in the days to come. So thank you so much for being with us, and we'll see you next time.